friends. It is Denise Krebs, and after much technology excitement, shall we say, we're finally on. And I am super excited to introduce you to a brand new friend of mine, Miss Cynthia. Her husband calls her Princess, which is why I'm wearing my crown today in honor of her. And so help me welcome Miss Cynthia to this Facebook Live on Authors Week. And I'll tell you an interesting story. So as I was telling Cynthia this earlier, it's kind of one of those things that how did you find me kind of thing. And so I had 5 authors who I knew, one of them actually my friend yesterday that was an author from a decade ago. So I had 5 authors this week and I needed one more person. And I thought, surely there is some friend of mine that is on Facebook that was an author, but maybe I just didn't know they were an author, or they were a friend of a friend. And so I let good old Facebook search engine do some investigative research for me. And I put in author and I put in friends of friends, and a handful of people popped up, and some of them I didn't really know who their friends were as well. But then when I saw Cynthia, and she had such a cool picture with her and her husband, that caught my eye first. And then when I saw who our mutual friends were, I was like, oh, well, I love those 2 people. We should know each other, and I bet she's going to be fabulous. And already I have found that I love her. So this crown is for Miss Cynthia. So welcome, Miss Cynthia. And thank you so much for being willing to let me interview you for Authors Week.
Absolutely. I'm pleased to be here with you, and I'm pleased to have you as a new friend. And thank you for wearing the tiara.
Yes. So anyway, this is my friends know that I wear my tiara because I am a princess, because I'm a daughter of the king. Absolutely. And so that's where I wear it. And it's more fun, when I do networking events and people walk past your table and they are afraid to talk to you because you might ask them something. I usually carry, I don't even have it, I usually carry my magic wand. It must be missing. And I ask them, if I gave you my magic wand and you could change one thing about your health, what would you change? And so it's a fun way to strike up a conversation. But for today, I'm wearing it for you.
I love that. Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So my first question is, what in the world led you to write a book? And when did you write your book? Tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay, my book is called Learning to Breathe, and it is a memoir. It's my story. It tells about my traumatic childhood, my past, overcoming many obstacles to be where I am today. So it is my story. And I always, as a child, when I was in those circumstances that were unpleasant, I escaped those situations by reading. And I became one of the characters in the book. And I loved the smell of the pages. I loved the feel of the pages. I loved the Newbery Award winners, and I always wanted to be one. I wanted to see my name there too, but not so much for the glory of it for me, but I wanted to have that same impact that those authors were having on me. They were making my life better every day when it wasn't so great. Mm-hmm. So I had many people that asked me, well, why don't you write a book and tell your story? And just like most people, I thought, oh, nobody wants to read my story. But then I told myself, if it made a difference to one person, just one person, it would be worth my efforts. And so that's why I started writing my book. Of course, I do write other things. I write blogs and try to entertain just through my life experiences as well. And I'm currently writing another book. So I'll let you take over with questions as not to monopolize our time together.
Oh, it's fine. So is your book written for kids as they're potentially going through a bad situation?
It has some adult content. I would have to say it deals with abuse. It deals with some mental health issues that my mother suffered from. and some alcoholism, that sort of thing. So I would say mature audiences, and in a sense of maybe older teens who are struggling, even women who find themselves at a point in their life that they want more. They want more than where they are, because it's about embracing the positive. Circumstances don't define us. We define us. God defines us. His story is so much bigger than the stories that we tell ourselves. And so anyone that finds themselves wanting to improve, wanting more, wanting to focus on positive, the beginning of the book is kind of dark. I'm not going to lie. Even when I pick it up and I go, gosh, it's kind of depressing in the beginning. But if you stay with it till the end, the light shines through. God shines through.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. So, oftentimes when people write books about their own journey, it puts you in a very vulnerable place because you're going to bear all. And sometimes I know that friends of mine who have been through traumatic situations, not everybody knows their stuff. And so I can imagine that as you poured yourself out into that, if there were people who didn't know that side of you, it can be a little scary.
There were several people who read my book and then messaged me and they said, girl, I had no idea that you ever experienced this. How did I not know? Why did you never tell me? How do you still have a smile on your face? And that's the whole point of the story. I do still have a smile on my face, a smile in my heart, and hopefully that pours out into other people. It was a very draining experience to write the book, and I was very guarded in protecting the identities of other people that were involved, because I did not give anyone else a voice in my book. It was my perspective. And I feel like if you don't give someone else the opportunity to address what you're saying in your book, that you have to protect their identities somewhat. So I was careful. This was my story. This was not anyone else's story, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one thing for me to say, Joe Bob did X, Y, and Z to me, and then that gives a place for Joe Bob to say, wait, that's not the whole story. So I think that's very insightful on your part, because it not necessarily from a protection standpoint, but from you then don't have to engage in a battle all over again.
Right. And honestly, it was about respect as well. Even though some of those people hurt me, I still respect them as people and respect their journey as well. Their journey may have afflicted me in some way. However, I do respect everyone in my life that's been a part of my story.
Absolutely. So how long did it take you to write your book?
I would say actively, so being a writer, one of the things that you have to do is you have to be disciplined. You have to sit down, you have to show up every day. And I think sometimes that's hard. It's hard to sit down and make it your job. But when I actively sat down and started doing it, I would say 6 to 8 months brought it together quite well. I'm working on a new book now, and I expect to have that one done in just a couple of months, because I've learned some personal discipline skills. When you're working for someone else, you have to show up at a certain time and you get to leave at a certain time. And we have to regulate ourselves in the same way. We have to commit to our own projects, just like we would, even more so, I would say, than what we would do for someone else.
Yes, that's my coach would call that a golden nugget. That is so true. Because if we don't, then we're just hurting ourselves. And if we don't reach our goals, and we didn't put in the work, then who are you going to blame but you?
Right. So it's about showing up every day and wanting the result. Um, I also work with a coach. She's been wonderful for me. And there was a time, I would say maybe a month ago, and I said, I come to this office and I just sit here and it's like, I'm just not inspired. And so we did some things to make it a little bit more fun. And now I love my office and I can't wait to come down here and write. But we have to invest in ourselves. So I put a mirror in my office, so not so that I can primp and look at myself all day, but it tricks me into believing that there's other people here. I see movement. It's not just total silence. Some people work really well in a total silent, very bland office. I'm not one of those people. That's why I have my little tree over here. So I just did things that bring inspiration into this space.
Mm-hmm. And before the call started, she showed me the gorgeous tree skirt that she has there, which I'm thinking, oh, I love it.
It's a faux fur teal tree skirt, and I did that because I'm going to use it year round, and I like that color. So it makes me happy.
Very cool. I was going to say, does the tree get to stay up all year long, or is it just for Christmas?
No, the tree is going to be my lamp. It's the light in my space. So
I like it.
it's not a Christmas tree, it's a Cynthia tree.
I like it. I like it. Very cool. Okay, let's see. What were my other questions I was going to ask you? I have to look. I got so excited about your tree, I forgot what my questions were. So how has being an author impacted your life?
For one, it has allowed me to be creative, to express myself in ways that I would not have expressed myself before, sharing that part of me with other people. But I think the greatest thing that I've gained from writing is the personal messages that I get, even if it's from a blog. It may be the middle of the night. I had someone message me, and when I woke up, it said, oh my gosh, your blog resonated with me so much. I needed it so much right now. It was exactly what I needed to hear. And whenever I write, I always pray that God will get those words that I put on paper to the right person who needs them at that time. And so when I get that response from someone that it's impacted them, it just fills me with joy, completely overflowing with joy. It's not that I do this for my own personal satisfaction. I really do it because I want to make a difference to other people. And we don't always get that the response from people. We don't always get that interaction with them. We don't always hear that we make an impact. But when that one person reaches out to say, hey, this really resonated with me, it's like, woohoo, I'm so excited. Somebody got it. And a lot of times the message that they receive may not be the message that I intended. It's how they interpret it and how they needed to interpret it at that time in their life, in their own journey.
Yeah, I remember the pastor at the church that we used to go to would always talk about how people would come up to him after a sermon and just lament about how much the sermon meant and how God spoke to them, and they would go into this dissertation about exactly what it was, and the pastor would kind of go, oh, okay, and then he'd say, I don't know what they were talking about, because like I preached on Job. I don't know how they got this out of but it's okay. God used it, and that's all that matters. So
absolutely. So when I get the feedback from other people that they enjoyed it, or they laughed, or they cried, that it really brought about an emotional response, then it fills me with joy every single time.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for sharing about that. Let's see. So we already talked about that. So I think the last question is, if somebody were listening and they had a dream about being an author, or if they knew that they had a book in their heart, what advice, and you've already mentioned about the discipline, what advice would you give them besides that to take that journey?
So, anybody is a writer who picks up a pen and starts to write their story or starts typing on a keyboard. Being an author does not mean you have to be published. Being an author is expressing your words, and nobody can take that away from you. Anybody can be an author. To what extent you want to pursue the journey, now that's a different story. But anybody can be an author, and we all have a story to tell. Now, the one thing that I would say, my first book was self-published, but it was self-published through a publishing company, so they provided assistance. I think that that's a really great way to go. Even though now I have traditional publishers that have talked with me, I still like the control that you have when you do self-publishing. So don't feel like you have to have a major publisher take on your project for you to consider yourself an author. You can be an author just by picking up a pen and writing your story. You can write a blog, you can write a post on Facebook. You just have to start, and you have to believe and want it. And just like with anything, if you want to be an interviewer, you just have to do it. So don't let anyone tell you you can't. And one of the things that I would like to really share is that nothing in my life that I have accomplished the traditional way, whether it be college or jobs or whatever it is. I always have had to do it another way. I've always had to find another way. And so many people, when they feel like they have one way to approach a project or approach a goal, and then a door closes, find another way. Find another way. I had moved around by the time I was 36 years old. I believe I had moved 34 times. So there were a lot of things that traditional college wasn't in the cards for me that way. So I did a lot of mine through online learning. There's always another way, and don't give up just because your first way of doing something didn't work out. If it means enough to you, just keep trying.
Yeah. And I think, I often talk to our kids about that very life skill, and the perseverance is not a skill that's necessarily taught today to our generation, our school generation, because it seems like if things are too hard, people give up. And I think it's super important to encourage the next generation to be persistent, to keep moving forward, to persevere if it is something that is important enough to you. If it's not, then don't worry about it. There's still a good thing about the skill, but the value of it, based on how important it is a skill that we've forgotten to teach, or we've lost the teaching of it. I don't know which one it is.
You can always find another way.
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
So whatever it is, being an author, being a doctor when you're 50, whatever, you can do it. You can do it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think, let me look here. I think we covered all of my questions. Is there anything else that you think our listeners or our viewers would be interested in? And I'll put a link at the bottom to your book.
Okay.
And when your new book comes out, maybe we'll do another round. I know you've got some other plans going on for the release of that book, but we'll see what happens, right?
Yes, feel free to look me up on Facebook, Cynthia Tucker-Bain, and I also have cynthiatuckerbain.com and bakingitasafarmgirl.com. That's where I put some of my more funny, my lifestyle blogs, and there's some on there that just everyday life that will make you chuckle. So check it out.
Are you a farm girl?
Baking It as a Farm Girl.
Are you a farm girl though? Do you live on a farm?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did live on a farm. My husband and I lived in a 300-year-old farmhouse on 400 acres in southeastern Virginia. And so I had to learn to exist as a farm girl. So that's where Baking It as a Farm Girl came in.
Oh, I can only imagine what that blog has to offer. I can't even imagine trying to fake it. I have a vision of a TV show in my head now.
Green Acres, I'm sure. That was very much my life. Very
Yeah.
much. So,
Well,
thank you so much, Denise. This has been a pleasure and fun, and it's been so great getting to know you here together.
yes, thank you for your time, and I am super excited that we are now new Facebook friends.